tech today here at our motorcycle lab. We're going to continue on with our series on this GL set of carburetors here. So our next big thing we said we're going to do is we're going to actually check to see that the needle assembly is going to be able to seal itself. Now, guys, I got a couple of different ways that I like to do this. I personally like to use fuel. And the reason being is, what are we running through this carburetor? Fuel, okay? But per manuals and specifications, it's real common to use a Mighty Vac tool, and we can actually put some pressure in here. Then we're going to use soapy water, and we're going to see if we can get a visual to see if we're leaking around that needle and seat. Is that pretty cool? Because if it leaks here, what's it going to do on the bike? It's going to be a mess, right? So let's take a look at this tool in this kit here. Can we rotate the camera this way? You guys haven't got to play with this much, you said, right? This guy right here is the adapter for the tool itself. There's a little locking tab on here. I highly recommend you get this on here. I can see that there's a little bit of lube on here from last time it got used. This here, I don't know if you can see where that locks onto the tool. Okay, now watch, pay attention to this, back over the table here. Listen to me on this. You're going to end up having problems if you do not test your tool. That's an O-ring there. You think that can leak? Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and just get some soap and water on here. And now I'm just going to simply plug it with my hand. And by the way, on the back of this, I have pressure or I have vacuum. So I'm going to use pressure, okay? And when I do this, I should be able to see this build up. Now I've got 8 or 9 pounds of pressure on here. And I've got no soap bubbles, and I lost my pressure. Do I have a good fitting?
Yes.
You absolutely have to check that, or you're going to end up saying something's wrong when it isn't. So make sure that you check your tool there. So from there, I'm just going to go over a couple of barbs because I want to take this back off, right? If I shove that thing all the way on, I'm going to be stuck with it. Does that make sense? Once again, I'm going to test the tool. I got pressure? Okay, so I have no leaks around my fitting. I can go ahead and use this accordingly. So one other thing we need to do is this has a crossover pipe. Do you remember that? Oh. Nope, we're going to use this here now. I'm going to use a solid one. I want to plug it. So I'm going to plug that guy. Makes sense?
No, should plug this one here too, shouldn't we?
Yep. So, got those. Okay. We're gonna keep going with this here. We're gonna go through our fuel inlet. We've plugged the crossovers to the 2 other carburetors, and our big goal here then is to spray some soapy water around here. We've made some modifications, so I'm gonna go ahead and check my tool again. Life's good on the tool. Fits pretty good around there. And now do you guys see? So I've got really good pressure. I'm actually at about 12 PSI. You're gonna see anywhere from 8 to 10 PSI is what I've seen. I've seen some high as 15 PSI that these have to be able to hold. Now watch though, guys. When I pop the float, did you hear the little squeeze out of there? And let's see if we can get the camera to actually see the bubbles here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pump this up. I'm going to shoot it in my face. Good thing for safety glasses, right? Now watch what happens when this is leaking a little bit. You can see that I'm getting some bubbles that are coming up around here, okay? Now that tells me obviously that I'd be leaking. Now, since we're good on this, and now I'm going to just pump this back up. Shoot, I'm holding 15 PSI. Is that needle and seat in good condition? The other thing that we're proving is we're not leaking around the aluminum crush washer that we installed. Make sense? Okay, so let's test this one in another fashion. So that's one way that you can do it with your Mighty Vac. But I said that I like to do fuel, so we're going to go that way. So we need our air. Now watch this in the video here because I don't want to damage that seat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to need fuel in that. Roll it in. Notice here, I'm just doing a test, so I'm not putting that on there very tight, just enough to have some friction on it, okay? Now guys, here's what we're gonna do, is I'm going to hold the camera to be able to focus on this here, in this area right here, okay? And do you need light on there? That's good. What we're looking for is that when I apply this, we got the fuel higher than the carburetor. Now, this is not the normal operation of this carburetor, is it? But we know that we want this to be able to seal. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the fuel valve on here. Okay, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to get my flashlight out here and I'm looking for any fuel to be across here. If I get even the slightest seep right here, it tells me that the aluminum crush washer or the seat is not working. Now watch this. I'm going to make a little bit of a mess. I'm going to have to dry it back off. But I'm going to go ahead and allow the fuel through. You guys see that? Now, pay attention here. Here's the reason I went ahead and wanted to do this again. Is when I pop this off, what did I just get out of the line? So I'll turn the fuel back on. I'm going to let it just sit on its own weight. Now, if I wouldn't have dried that off, would I have the, you know, the illusion of or the delusion, I guess you'd say, of the old fuel there, and it would make me think that I got a problem? Man, he is dry, life is good, and he's ready to go. Does that make sense? So turn that fuel back off. Okay. The next thing that we would do is, let's just go ahead and set that off to the side. You guys will get this from the video, and I don't need to worry about it too much. But the next thing that I would do is I would reassemble the carburetor fully back to stock. Put everything back together, and we will do this. I would put my bowl screws in, I would have this tight, and then what we typically do, guys, especially like on inline fours, or it could be a single, it doesn't matter what it is I'll typically put this in a vise with some soft jaws or some rags, supply a fuel source to it, turn the fuel on, and actually check multiple things. First off, I'm going to check that make sure the bowl gaskets are actually sealing. Does that make sense? Are you with me? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that fuel is not coming out any overflow tubes. A lot of our bowls have the brass tube with hoses that go to the ground. I'm going to check that those aren't dripping. Let the fuel sit there for a half hour or something. Walk away, do something else. Does that make sense? You want these to be able to seal on the bench. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look down the throat of the carburetor, and I'm going to look down the throat of the carburetor and see if there's any raw fuel coming up the emulsion tube, right? You remember seeing that in some of the training videos that we watched? So that's another thing to do. And then the last thing I'm going to do is the vehicles have accelerator pumps like this bike right here. I would go ahead and have all the carburetors fully assembled, prime them a couple of times. Then I'm going to actually operate the throttle plate, watching the accelerator pump fuel through the throat, and then I would watch the jet. Like in this case right here, you see that jet in the back of the carburetor? And I would go ahead and be operating that throttle, and on all four carburetors, you're going to see that raw fuel shooting down the throat of the car. Does that make sense? All of that needs to happen here. If I do the fuel test and the bowl leaks, I have a chance to fix it. If I do the accelerator pump test and it doesn't pump fuel, it's not going to pump on the bike, okay? And you're going to be pulling carbs back off. One last thing that I'd like to make a recommendation on is that on especially like an inline 4-cylinder or set of banks, go ahead and set that. Let me grab a carb right here. I'll just use this twin. I want you to think about something here. Okay, so I told you that I put this in a vise, right? Are you with me? Let me guys give you a tip here that I found very beneficial over the years. Is that when this bike sits on the kickstand, these carbs sit like this?
No.
Have you ever had a customer that complains about their bike leaks gas after you did a carb job, or they just simply say, my bike leaks gas? You get the carbs off, you check, and like, oh, there's just nothing wrong, okay? Another good idea is to take the carburetors and go put the bike on its kickstand, kind of get an idea of the angle that it leans at, take the carburetors, set them in the vise like this. Are you now duplicating a bike on its kickstand? What if there was a little crack here? What if the overflow tube is only cracked on this carb and really high up? When you tip the fuel level in that flow bowl like this, now that fuel level has the capability to go high up on the overflow tube. Does that make sense? That pretty cool? Yeah. Man, I'll tell you what, that little trick right there, I've never seen any service manual or publication like that. It's only helped me a couple of times, but the couple of times it helped me, it really helped me diagnose the problem. One time I had a crack in the bowl where somebody had like beat it with a hammer and knocked it off. And then a different situation was where an overflow tube was cracked really high up. The bike would only leak when it was on the side stand. Okay, so pretty cool stuff. Well guys, that's how we actually would bench test carburetors. Like I said, just for the purpose of YouTube here, we did it where they weren't fully assembled and good to go, but when we finish this one up, we will do that and probably add that into another one of the videos. Now you guys are gonna go test your carbs when you guys get done today, right? All right, sounds good.